Our 2-week cruise of Orkney starts with a crossing from Loch Ardwall on the north coast of the mainland of Scotland across to Stromness. It takes us past the famous Old Man of Hoy sea stack.
We're coming into Hoy-mouth, which is the sound between Hoy and what's known as mainland, the island to the north. And the one thing you learn pretty quickly about the Orkney sailing scene is the tide is king. We're coming in here and we're probably just about half an hour later than I'd like to have been, so we'd like to have just come in on the last of the flood just before it ebbs, and it changes from flood to ebb really quickly. Unfortunately, it's just started to turn, so we've got about a knot of tide against us, and that will increase quite quickly. And at Springs, which we're pretty much here, you can start building up to anything up to about 6-7 knots of tide, up to 8 in one place through the sound. So you've got to be really careful with this. The other thing about this is if the tide's sluicing out and there's wind against it, then it kicks up a terrible sea, and there's no wind at all at the minute. We're having to motor, but the sea is already beginning to build up. So behind us we're getting white horses just starting to form as the ebb race really just pushes against the incoming swell. So typically it's a messy sea state of where you've got wind or tide against the swell, so just beginning to build up here now. Nothing to worry about, but you wouldn't want to be here in a couple of hours time, and certainly not in a strong incoming westerly wind. So the tide is beginning to start to roar. We're beginning to see white horses behind us there. Not sure it's visible in this wide angle lens, but this is definitely as late as you want to go coming in. We've got about nearly 2 knots of tide against us now, and it's building fast. You can see flat water ahead of us, tantalisingly close, and we'll be fine, but this would not be good if there was some wind behind us. So the big lesson of this is get in early. Well, that became genuinely scary. We went from we'll be okay to oh, we're not going to be okay in 2 minutes. So we suddenly had a whole bunch of tide against us, and looking at the GPS, for a while we were actually stationary. So we've had to crab sideways out of the main current. So we're now hopefully through the best of it, but we're on the starboard side of the channel, and we want to get to the port side of the channel. So I'm going to pick my moment to crab left to get into Stromness. So overall, that was a very salutary lesson on the strength of tides, particularly at spring tides in Orkney.
We were very pleased to get into the shelter of Stromness Marina. The following morning, the winds built up to a good force 6 westerly, so we walk out to have a look at the Hoy-mouth entrance, just as the ferry from Scrabster arrives. Powering in at about 15 knots, the ferry has no trouble with the tide, but you can see it's building up already. With wind against tide, the standing waves are beginning to build in the centre of Hoy-mouth. About 3 hours into the ebb, and the Hoy Sound is a mass of swirling water. Not a place to be in a small boat. After 2 days of sheltering from near gale conditions in Stromness, it was time to move. We were going to head up to Ardwall, the main town on Orkney.
days of being gale bound. Yes, another gale, but we made the most of our time there, and got to know the town and all around. So we are heading out to Scapa Flow. We're under sail with the foresail and main, and having a lovely sail, even though it's a bit of a grey day. And we've just got out from Stromness just in time, because the ferry is coming out, and then that's going to be going out through Hoy. Is it Sound or Mouth?
Sound.
Sound. So all good.
The quickest way round to Kirkwall will be to go out of the Sound of Hoy, the way we came in, and head up the west side of the mainland. But the local knowledge is that wouldn't be a great idea after 2 or 3 days of strong westerly winds. The sea state out there might still be a bit unpleasant. So instead, what we're going to do is what's known as an easterbound. So we're heading down to the south side of Scapa Flow, out through the bottom, round the bottom of South Ronse, which is the east side of the islands, up the coast and into Kirkwall. It's quite a long way round, and to be honest, to do it in one go, we're getting all the tides right from Stromness is pretty tricky with a boat of our size. So we're going to have a night in an anchorage called Longhope, which is on the island of South Walls near Lyoness. That'll be easier tomorrow to find the tide just correct for going round the bottom of South Ronse. But it's a sort of slightly grey day, a bit of blue sky, patches of it, and a lot nicer seascape here in the entrance to Hoy Sound than it was a couple of days ago. Hard to believe that this remote area of Scapa Flow was once such a hive of activity in the water, both world wars. There were about 40,000 troops, well, men and women, based here in the Second World War. It was a big refuelling area for the British Navy. Even today it's remarkably busy, because down to our port side there are about 7 or 8 oil tankers all anchored up. There's a big oil terminal on Flotter Island, and yeah, it's an extraordinary place. So we're just creeping against a gentle breeze past Lyoness, which was in the Second World War a huge oil terminal for bunkering Navy ships. But unfortunately the museum, which is excellent, is shut at the moment because they're doing a big refit. It'll reopen this summer. We've had a night at Longhope off South Walls, and we're on a visitor's mooring. There are 2 there, which seem in good condition. It blew and it was just relentlessly wet, so we didn't get ashore unfortunately, because it looks quite an interesting place to go, and there's a hotel there. However, we're following day, we've got our timings right, we hope, to go around the bottom of South Ronse. So we're just sailing out past the north coast of South Walls. It's midsummer's day, and it's about 13 degrees up here. It's also also 103 years today when the German Navy scuttled their ships here at the end of the First World War. 1919, the boats were interned here awaiting their fate, and there was a nervousness amongst the fleet that they would be handed over to the French, which they didn't want. So after a signal from the lead ship, about 30, I think, ships pulled the plugs and scuttled themselves. They're just over there in the sound that we sailed through yesterday. Must have been quite a sight. The big curve in this track of ours was just simply a final surge of northerly going tide. So we're just still slightly fighting the last of the tide, and we should get favourable around the tip in about 20 minutes. Having fully absorbed the importance of tides here in Orkney, the navigator is very pleased with himself. We worked out that we needed to be at the southern end of South Ronaldsay, off the Lowther Rock, at high water, -5 hours, which is 12:40, and it's now pretty much there. So we're very spot on, and we're just scooting past the rock now. This is the Lowther Rock beacon, and the tide is beginning to swirl past it already. This area at peak has tides of 8 knots, so you really wouldn't want to be getting the tides wrong here. We've got about a knot and a half with us now, so we're just beginning to see the tide taking us past the rocks, and the rocks themselves are pretty low lying. There's a beacon on them, but if you didn't know that, if it wasn't for that, they'd be underwater for a lot of the time. You just see disturbed water. This is something you don't get very often in Orkney, apparently. Flat calm. We've motored up the east side of South Ronaldsay, just rounded the corner of northeast corner of DNS at the point of Mull. Again, just trying to work the tides to make sure we got slack water at the point, and now we're going to get a little bit of tide with us as we head westwards towards the entrance of Kirkwall. But we've had enough wind for the last week or so, so we'll take a bit of motoring in flat calm for a change. Sunshine at last in Orkney, and we're heading up for Vassar Sound.
Once again, tidal planning would be important in this trip because it would take us within only about a mile of the O2 2 megawatt tidal generator. There's a small marina in Westray called Ardwall, and we were able to shelter here for a couple of days of strong winds. It gave us the chance to walk out to see the amazing north coast and also to visit the beautiful Noop Head lighthouse in the very northwest tip of the island. With strong southeasterlies forecast, we decided to sail on to Stronsay, another slightly tricky tidal planning exercise. The harbour of Whitehall was once the centre of herring fishing here in Orkney, and it provides really good shelter from southeasterly and southerly winds. We cycled down to the east coast of the island to see the impressive arch at the Vat of Kirbister.
It's hopefully final day on Orkney, and we're anchored in East Weddell Sound beside one of the Churchill barriers. 5:30 in the morning. Got to get south to get the tide across to Wick. Unfortunately, we've also got interesting weather. So the blob you can see there is one of the remains of a block ship, and that's one of the Churchill barriers. But visibility's not great. We're just hoping it'll clear. It is beginning to lift a bit, but currently it's only about 200 meters, I guess. So we'll be going out with radar, AIS, and lots of pairs of eyes. Shetland Coast Guard, this is sailing vessel Maunie of Ardwall. Maunie of Ardwall with routine traffic, over.
Morning of Ardwall, this is Shetland Coast Guard. Good morning, go channel 67, standby.
67.
Morning of Ardwall, this is Shetland Coast Guard on channel 67, over.
Shetland Coast Guard, this is Maunie of Ardwall. Good morning. We'd like just to register a passage plan, please. We're on passage from Home Sound on South Ronaldsay to Wick. We have 2 persons on board, and our ETA Wick is midday, over.
Morning of Ardwall, this is Shetland Coast Guard, roger, thank you for that, and have a safe trip. Coast Guard out.
The final challenge of cruising in Orkney is leaving the place. So we've got to cross the famous Pentland Firth. It's only a 7-mile crossing to tip of the northeast corner of Scotland. But the tides there at Springs, and we are at Springs at the moment, run up to 12 knots, which would not be good. So the good thing is we've managed to come down the east side of South Ronaldsay, just 2 hours from East Weddell Sound. So we've timed it really just perfectly. So we've just arrived at the tip of South Ronaldsay, as the tide's about to turn, and so we'll be as close to slack water as you get around here. It never really goes slack, but we will have tide just pushing us sort of westwards towards the tip of the South Romsey, and then it turns and goes east and builds with some speed. So by the time we get across, we should just be beginning to feel fairly significant push sort of heading us from west to east. There's no wind, or very little wind. It's probably about 7 knots. So we're motoring, it's a bit rolly, but I'd rather have that than a strong wind here, because this corner can be quite challenging in strong weather, and for a small boat you've got to be careful. Well, we're in the Pentland Firth now, and we aim to be at the very southern tip of South Romsey at 6 hours before high water Dover, and we're about 5 minutes early, but it's fine. So we've now got a little bit of tide going with us, sort of taking us slightly westwards around the tip, and we're going past the Pentland Skerries, so the island behind you on this video is Muckle-Skerry, which is the biggest, and we're in the middle of what's known as the Liddell Eddy. So when the tide's running hard, this bit of sea is pretty unpleasant, but perfect at the moment. Pretty calm, slight roll on us, and yeah, seems to have got the timing right, which is good. Well, apart from having the motor, these are pretty much the perfect conditions to cross the Pentland Firth. So it's been worth waiting a couple of days to get this calm weather, and to have timings just right, to have calm water. Although there is, even at supposed slack, there are various little tidal eddies in the water, so it's never still here.
After an excellent, if windy, 2 weeks in Orkney, it was great to be in Wick. The small marina is part of what was once a hugely busy herring fishing port.